There's a story unfolding behind Meghan Markle's carefully managed image that makes the tabloids look tame by comparison. For years, the public has been fed the polished narrative. A hard-working actress who found her prince, stepped into the harsh spotlight of royalty, then bravely walked away from tradition to forge her own path. But if you peel back that glossy exterior, whispers from her past paint a version of Meghan that feels almost unrecognizable. Not the victim of palace politics, not the humanitarian activist, but someone whose party lifestyle, questionable choices, and relentless reinvention were every bit as calculated as her rise to the royal stage. I didn't want to believe it at first. Like most people, I thought her struggles were probably just the usual. Insecurities, pressure to look perfect, maybe some cosmetic touch-ups along the way. Hollywood has chewed up plenty of people before her. But then I had a conversation in Toronto with someone who knew Meghan personally, someone who was part of her inner circle back in the days when her social life revolved around the exclusive Soho House scene. And what they told me, it wasn't just gossip. It was the kind of behind-the-curtain story that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about her. This wasn't a distant acquaintance who bumped into her once or twice. This was someone who partied with her regularly, who saw her when the cameras weren't rolling and the royal act hadn't yet begun. And according to them, those nights weren't just about cocktails, champagne toasts, or celebrity mingling. There were substances on the table, serious ones. Meghan wasn't simply in the room while it happened. She was, allegedly, the one people leaned on to make sure the night never ran dry. She wasn't just indulging, she was facilitating. Weed? That was child's play. The real story was cocaine. At first, I thought this had to be an exaggeration. Meghan Markle, future Duchess, associated with that scene? But this source wasn't joking. They described her as someone who not only used it, but had a preference for it. She knew who to call, where to get it, and she didn't hesitate to share. It wasn't some occasional experiment. It was a lifestyle. And here's where things really start to collide with the royal narrative we all know. In 2016, when Prince Harry was still trying to rebuild his image after his Vegas scandals, he flew to Toronto to spend time with Meghan. According to the whispers, things got messy. There was talk of a late-night run that went sideways, with Meghan herself allegedly at the centre of it, trying to score not just for herself, but for Harry, and, shockingly, even Princess Eugenie, who was reportedly part of the social circle that night. Now, let's pause. Imagine the stakes here. If even a fraction of this is true, it's not just a late-night mishap. It's a full-blown royal scandal waiting to explode. A prince, a princess, and Meghan all tangled in a scene like that. If it had gone public back then, their relationship might not have survived. And maybe that's why nobody ever heard about it. No police records, no headlines, just rumours that someone with serious influence buried the entire incident before it could surface. Looking back, though, the hints were already there. Take Meghan's infamous trip to Jamaica for Trevor Engelson's wedding. People laughed at the story of her rolling hundreds of joints for the guests, treating it like a quirky anecdote about her being fun and relaxed. But when you place that memory next to these new allegations, it doesn't look so quirky anymore. It looks like a pattern. And then there's the nose. Meghan herself has joked in the past about having her father's so-called Markle nose, claiming it gave her a more European look and set her apart. But if you line up the photos, the story doesn't quite match. Her earliest pictures show a rounder, softer nose, more like her mother's. Somewhere along the way, that nose changed. Sharper bridge, narrower tip, nostrils completely reshaped. Cosmetic surgery, almost certainly. But according to people who knew her, there may have been a darker reason behind those changes. Cocaine isn't kind to cartilage. Prolonged use eats away at the nasal passages, collapsing the bridge, warping the shape. If that was happening, then surgery wasn't just vanity, it was repair work, more than one time, which would explain why her appearance seemed to shift so dramatically between 2015, 2018, and even now. Each phase revealed a subtly different Meghan, as if every few years a new version of her stepped out, while the old one was erased. That's the theme that keeps coming up when people talk about her past: erasure. Meghan didn't just reinvent herself, she wiped away the people, the habits, even the family ties that didn't fit the new narrative. Friends from Toronto said she had this uncanny ability to compartmentalize her life. She could live one way with her party crowd, another way with her Hollywood friends, another with Harry. She told each group just enough to seem authentic, but never enough for anyone to truly know her. And if anyone pushed too far, asked too many questions, she could be cold, dismissive, cutting them off entirely. That talent for compartmentalization might also explain how she bonded so tightly with Harry. Remember, this was a prince with a rebellious streak, a man the world had already seen partying in Vegas, photographed in compromising moments, rumoured to have dabbled with substances himself. Meghan didn't need to tame him. She just needed to keep up, maybe even outdo him. For someone like Harry, who had spent his life being judged under a microscope, Meghan became the one person who offered indulgence without consequence. She was the safe place to let loose, the keeper of secrets. And if she was orchestrating the private setups, ensuring privacy, sourcing what was needed, well, that's a bond deeper than romance. That's complicity. Her rise, then, doesn't look like the story of a naive actress swept off her feet by a prince. It looks like the work of someone who knew exactly how to play the game, piece by piece, until she had a grip strong enough to hold him. She didn't stumble into power, she built it, step by step, nose job by nose job, reinvention by reinvention. The deeper you dig, the more contradictions appear. She tells one story in interviews, then slips a different detail in another. She swears she never Googled Harry, but then reels off his interests like someone who'd studied him in advance. She claims she was isolated and controlled in the UK, yet flight records suggest she was bouncing between countries freely, even while heavily pregnant. She presents herself as transparent, but official documents, like her birth certificate, are mysteriously sealed. Even her alma mater narrative has quietly shifted. The Palace website once proudly described her as a double major at Northwestern, fluent in multiple languages, celebrated for her humanitarian work. Those details have quietly vanished. What remains is the stripped-down truth. An actress known for suits. No grand academic achievements, no humanitarian accolades. It's almost as if the very institutions that once bolstered her myth are now quietly dismantling it. And then there's her ability to burn bridges, old friends replaced, family members cut off, entire social circles left behind the second they no longer fit the image she was curating. In Toronto, she was known as someone who could light up a room, make you feel like her best friend, but also someone who could vanish overnight if you crossed her. She left behind a trail of people confused, hurt, or silenced. It makes you wonder how much of the Meghan Markle we see today is real, and how much is a carefully constructed character upgraded every few years as old versions are scrubbed away. This is why the story hits so hard, because it reframes everything. The nose jobs, the Soho House parties, the Jamaica wedding antics, even the whirlwind romance with Harry. It suggests that behind the curated photos and staged interviews lies a version of Meghan that few ever got to see. A version that was louder, sharper, and far more reckless than the Duchess image she later adopted. And if those Toronto whispers are true, if there really was a night in 2016 when Meghan arranged more than just dinner and drinks, if Harry and Eugenie were anywhere near that scene, then the entire fairy tale almost collapsed before it began. It didn't because someone made sure it didn't. Someone buried it. But buried things have a way of resurfacing. Today, Meghan still speaks about authenticity, empowerment, living her truth. But the more these old stories surface, the harder it is to reconcile them with the glossy narrative. Is she the inspirational figure she claims to be? Or is she just the latest in a long Hollywood tradition of reinvention at any cost? The people who once knew her say she was a master at survival, at creating new skins to step into when the old ones no longer worked. They say her eyes back then looked different, always lit up, always performing, like someone running on pure adrenaline. Compare that to now, where the performance is polished, controlled, even cold. Maybe that's what happens when the stakes rise from social climbing to global influence. The irony is that Meghan did have the tools to build a real legacy: intelligence, charm, ambition. But if the whispers from Toronto are true, then her foundation wasn't independence or authenticity. It was indulgence, access, and erasure. And as much as she tries to rewrite her past, the cracks are starting to show. Because here's the truth. Fairy tales are fragile. And when the makeup fades, when the reinventions pile up, when old stories start leaking out, the world begins to see the person behind the performance. Not the Duchess, not the actress, just Meghan.